Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Worth Your Time, Worth Your Money, an ongoing segment where I look at the opening hours of new and upcoming games, and today we're having a look at Super Fantasy Kingdom, being developed by Super Fantasy Games. How original. I don't think they've done anything else before this, but they're being published by Hooded Horse, who I think is one of the finest indie tastemakers in the market today. Pretty much sight unseen. If Hooded Horse is publishing, then I will give it a go. And I'm glad I did, because this game is absolute crack injected directly into your veins. There'll be a few caveats, chiefly around how much it really does outsource your progression into meta progression, but roundly I've really enjoyed it. It's always good when, you know, I sort of finish up those first few hours and I have to tear myself away to make this video, so you better believe I'll be jumping back into it. It's going to be a toss-up between this and Ball Pit, because I'm playing that like crazy. I really want to play Jurassic World 3, actually. I love it. That's a bit more of a thicker experience, right? A bit more of a hardcore game, but these two are really going to steal my attention span, what little I have. So high praise. If I had to describe this through comparison, which is something I might do a little bit more often, I found myself, not to drift too much, but we kind of bashed RV there yet for its shortcomings, but through that I actually recommended, you know, Firefighting Simulator as an alternate. I feel like giving people touchstones, alternate games to play, that sort of stuff, is probably even more value for these videos. So this, to me, is a mix between Dotage and The Last Spell, which, funnily enough, I'm a little bit down on The Last Spell. I really like Ishtar Games. I like their Dead In series. Dead In Antares is coming up shortly. I'm very excited for that. But The Last Spell, I think, was a misstep. It outsourced meta progression far too much and far too aggressively. Now, this game kind of does the same thing. However, it gets away with it because the runs are way shorter and the loop is much tighter. Long and short, if the runs in this blew out to an hour long each with your tiny incremental meta progression that is honestly really hard in the roguelite category, which is to say your ability to win and progress in a run is very much throttled by your progression upgrades as opposed to your actual skill. And while that is a bit of a cardinal crime, it's undone, or at least it works here, because the loop is punchy and short and fun. We've talked about the gameplay loop theory with like Halo 1 as the example. You do the same thing over and over for 10 seconds non-stop. But if it's that good, the player will lizard brain and switch off and not really think beyond the fact that they're just having fun. So this manages to actually address that problem. You just keep starting a new kingdom. You keep kind of doing the same things. You place villagers into buildings, you build them up, you upgrade, etc. You don't really get very far, and there's not a huge lot of variance to the build style. I suppose you can decide a little bit into what direction you're going to go with your upgrades and your first building rollouts, but your villages are very limited in the beginning, and again, a lot of this is stuff that you're waiting for meta progression to upgrade. Anyway, so I guess my point is to be cautionary if you are particularly allergic to, say, The Last Spell, which I kind of am. I really wish I liked that more, but that's not my fault. I wish it was a better game. Then, you know, be careful going into this, because it's similar but better. Arguably, it sticks to the landing. And I also compared it to Dotage as well, but that's more of a turn-based. In fact, this is the real-time stress wave defense version of Dotage, which might be just the pitch that you need, and if you haven't seen that game before and you are only drawn to this because this is new, you should check that one out as well. Villager placement, growing a colony, run based over time, you know, rinse and repeat. However, the runs are a bit longer and it's all turn based, so you're not really under the pump. You can pause in this and you often speed it up, but it's probably worth, now that I've got, you know, comparisons out of the way, let's actually peel back and have a little bit more of a talk about this. It's sort of split in two idler type mechanics. One is running your colony, which we've just sort of talked about then. You essentially use mouse wheel up and down to place villager limits into different production buildings. whether it's a lumberjack cutting down trees or stonemason quarrying, making food. All of these go into the loop of even expanding your storage. You have ceilings on storage. There is a courier system. You start with a mule, but unassigned dudes will courier gear back to main storage. In fact, it is a fully realized, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's what Father's Frontier, which I was a little bit down on, hung its hat on, real-time resource representation, as opposed to the antithesis, which is teleporting storages like Anno, right? And while I did say in Father's Frontier, like, good for them, they did it, but it doesn't really make the game stronger. In this is actually a really good example of it done perfectly well. So you'll place your buildings, and it's very limited where you can place them. And at first, you might just want to stack dudes into one building at a time as you reach the resources. This is what I was doing as I was figuring it out. Like, I would put all my guys down as lumberjacks. But the thing is, they are represented as the dude in the world, and they will run automatically. They'll take the roads and go faster. They'll go down. They'll become a lumberjack. They'll go out. They'll find a tree wherever that is, and it's random. Like, they're all over the place. And then they'll bring the wood back. The wood then will be quarried back by the mule into your main storage, and then that's how you have wood. It's actually a pretty long, arduous process, also coupled in the fact that there's a day-night cycle. Your villagers go to sleep at nighttime, so if you keep moving them between jobs and they've got a long way to go get the resources themselves, it becomes a huge pain in the bum. So coming up with a sort of maybe more flat build is what I've been doing recently, and I'm getting better results to try and deal with this bottlenecking. But you can in turn upgrade a lot of the buildings, like the lumberjack, for example. You can upgrade it to have a forester who uses like a gold currency to place forests right next to that lumberjack. And as long as you keep feeding gold into it, he will essentially create a much tighter, cleaner lumber economy, because your lumberjacks barely have to walk outside their door. And the same goes for many of the other resources, farms, things like that. Anyway, my point is that it's kind of doing, not that it's a pissing match, but it's kind of doing what Farthest Frontier is trying to do, but better and accidentally, and as a secondary to what is ultimately a more mobile-like wave defense type game, because that's the other half of it. You have heroes out the front. I'm using my hands and my arms and waving around. You can scroll up into the kingdom north of your little village's front door, basically, and all your heroes just line up. They sit in squares and fight. It's not very complex. There's no micro or macro or anything. You literally hire heroes, or you get them given to you through the course of beating waves. You buy a little square for them to stand in, and they stand there and just defend. Not very complex. Each of them want to eat at the end of a day-night cycle. You have a tavern, and that's like a food economy, so you can just forage for berries and they're okay, they'll do. But you want to get into longer tier, wheat into flour, into bakery, that sort of stuff, meat, hunting, a whole lot of things that I haven't even really touched on, but you can probably fill in the dots yourself. And as they eat, that's how they will, say, resurrect or heal. They'll heal fully anyway, but I think if they die, as long as you have a meal for them, they'll get back up. But they also get experience from eating the higher quality meals, which is inspired, which is something we should actually see as a gamey mechanic in more games. So they fight off the waves and kill the dudes, and from what I understand, they get no XP whatsoever for killing dudes. What they do get XP for is you having a strong logistics backend and feeding them higher quality food. It's great. It's combat XP done through the perspective of a colony manager. And then beyond that, there's this sort of open world I'm not 100% sold on. It's very Heroes of Might and Magic 3 kind of throwback. I mean, you can see that with the art. Oh, and let's not skip over the soundtrack. This might be the strongest Secret of Mana-like soundtrack I've heard in years. That should be enough for a lot of you to just go get it. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of retro throwback that you get these days, and there's a lot of bangers out there, but this feels almost authentic in a way that I actually haven't really heard in any recent games, not in a long time. It actually really made me want to kind of boot up original Secret of Mana. So that's an interesting aside, being the audiophile that I am. But yeah, the overworld map, it sort of has a Heroes of Might and Magic hidden pixel kinda, not to disparage, but there's paths that you expand as you sort of glory up. The longer you survive in a run, you get this glory currency, and you can use that to unlock perma paths. However, when you do a new run, you still would have to earn all that glory back up to, I don't know, 50 or whatever to get the next road. So while they are meta roads that carry between missions, upgrading the next one will actually start to be a ceiling. That will be starting to really push your runs, which is good. You want that. You need to reach for something new. But there's all these little bits and bobs and dudes hidden around the map, areas you can interact with or unlock or get, more meta progressions from interacting with them. And it's, like I said, it's a little bit Where's Waldo. It's a little bit hidden pixel, which is a mix of the graphic style and the kind of the small nature of the entire presentation. I guess I'm a little bit negative on it, but at the same time, some people might be head over heels nostalgic for this. Regardless, it works. It works all right. Arguably the weakest part of the entire package, but like I said, it's still good. There's not really anything overtly wrong with this game. It's great fun. It's really good. But like I said, you can peel back and look at it in a more derivative manner and go, the runs are kind of short. They are kind of repetitive. The meta progression's really aggressive, so the only way you're going to get into end game is by doing 50 runs and dying and doing the same thing over and over again. And like I said, depends how you look at how glasses are filled, right? So cynically, you might not be into that, but again, like the Halo example, to go full circle and put a bow on it, who really cares? If your 10-second loop is crack and fun, who cares if you do it ad infinitum and you just progress only a little bit at a time? So yeah, I really like this. And the truth is, if you pitched it to me that it was leaning kind of towards the last spell, I probably wouldn't have given it a go. So I'm glad I did, and I'm glad that they kind of resolved a mechanic or a methodology that I felt doesn't work. Seems it just needed a bit more tuning and tightening up. Anyway, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.